Hey guys, we're Sam and Ashley from The Green Shoestring, and earlier this year we made a trip up to Hong Kong to have a conversation with Sonalie. She's the founder of Green Queen Hong Kong, which is one of the biggest eco-wellness websites in Asia.
Yeah, we spoke for over an hour about some really engaging and compelling topics, everything from the future of sustainability in tourism, traveling more responsibly, and just everything. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, if you guys want to read some of our biggest takeaways from the interview we had with Sonalie, you can find it up on a blog post on our website. We put a link to that post in the description of this video, so definitely check that out. We learned so much from talking with Sonalie, and we think that you guys will too. So yeah, we hope you enjoy the video.
Here with Sonalie, who is one of the founders and one of the creative geniuses behind Green Queen Hong Kong. Sonalie, how are you?
I'm good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So Sonalie, how long have you lived in Hong Kong?
Well, I actually was born here. I'm a third culture kid, so my parents were expats, and then I ended up here starting my life, and then I came back 11 years ago after some time in Europe and the US and South America.
Very nice. For our readers who don't really know about Green Queen Hong Kong, can you maybe tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So Green Queen started out as my personal blog. I basically went on this journey where I became very interested in living a toxic-free, healthy life and eating organic vegetables and all of that. And I realized that it took a lot of time to find resources. This was 7 years ago in Hong Kong. There was very little. And so I started compiling a list of kind of where I got stuff because it was tough to find.
Right.
And I realized that other people might need it, but there was absolutely no thought to making it a media company or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I created this website on WordPress in a very basic way and didn't really do much. And then a couple years later, when Tracy moved here so that we could start our other business, Eco Warehouse, which is an organic global sourcing platform, that's when we looked at Green Queen, took a closer look and saw that it had traction. And so we thought, well, okay, this seems like it's people are coming. Yeah. We were also the #1 result for organic vegetables in Hong Kong. So we realized there was this thing called SEO that gave you traffic and just was the gift that kept on giving. And so we wanted to learn more about it and figure out kind of what is digital marketing. And so we decided to make Green Queen a formal media platform. And then within a year, it just took off. And now we're by far the largest eco-wellness media in Asia, actually, in English.
Wow, that's really impressive. Yeah. Very cool. So what is Green Queen Hong Kong's role in sustainability in the local community here?
I think it's pretty important because we get seen 3 million times a month on Google. Mm-hmm. Pretty much every search you do that has to do with toxic-free, sustainable, eco, zero waste, you're gonna find Green Queen. Yeah. So our job is pretty important. We're basically sharing the resources, we're telling inspiring stories, and we are also creating awareness with everything we do. So we actually play a big role in helping a lot of the local SMEs. When they first start, often their first point of call is Green Queen, and they write me an email and they go, I have this idea, I want to do it, and so we've nurtured a lot of businesses from startup to becoming mainstream by giving them a platform, by giving them coverage. So we also have the directory and all our treasure trove of articles, so people use us as a resource.
Yeah. So what are some of those local startups that you're most proud of? What are some of those?
Well, one that obviously comes to mind is something like a Happy Cow. So they're the vegan ice cream brand. Their founder launched really publicly at our Green Queen Market many years ago. We were one of the first, if not the first, to tell their story. Yeah. We would introduce them constantly to other partners and collaborators, and now they're in every supermarket, and they're a huge company, and they're part of our landscape. So that's definitely a big one. But even something more recent, like a Live Zero, you know, we were there when the store opened its doors, and we shared a video on Facebook, and it got almost a million views in reach, and that was incredible. Like, I think we are having a year of zero waste. Like, it's suddenly very on trend to discuss the zero waste lifestyle, which is great. I hope it stays on trend forever.
Definitely.
But that's an example of you know, so many people picked up the story and the concept from there.
Yeah, definitely.
So
tell me, what did you do before founding Green Hong Kong?
I did a lot of stuff. I started out in a more finance corporate background.
Yeah.
I worked in real estate investment. I worked in management consulting in London, and then I came here for a real estate job, and just basically got bitten by the eco bug when someone told me about the concept of green roofs. This was like many years ago, and I just got really into it and suddenly wanted to figure out if we could bring it to Hong Kong, which is, I think I was way too early. It totally didn't go anywhere, in the sense that I met up with academics and experts, and I learned all about the plants and what you needed to do to install green roofs, because basically in Hong Kong we have all these buildings with roofs that are just cement and they're doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I was really inspired by the example of the city of Chicago, where they got 30% of their buildings to convert to green roofs, and they lowered their pollution level, and not just air pollution, but noise pollution, light pollution. They increased biodiversity. It was more energy efficient for all the buildings. But I don't think that Hong Kong was ready for it. The government wasn't interested. A lot of the private landlords and developers weren't interested. So it definitely didn't go anywhere. But I did that for a year, just like really looking into it, and that's how I started learning more about the environment and how everything we do is connected to, you know, basically how your environment and your actions are connected. I didn't really understand that before.
Yeah, it's such an important relationship to understand.
Exactly, and I think that's when I got more into, you know, things like toxicity.
Yeah.
And I'd also always had a lot of health problems that, you know, allopathic medicine doesn't really address, because a lot of them are hormonal or, you know, mostly affecting women. So there's not a lot of medical research behind it. And that is how I started looking into the importance of what you eat.
Yeah.
And when I started looking into the importance of what you eat, I started learning about organic agriculture and pesticide use, and it sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah.
And then it all came together as, okay, everything I'm doing, every choice I'm making has an impact on my health, but also the health of the planet. And so that's how I bridge the two together.
Cool. Awesome. What do you think, can you tell some of our readers and some of your readers, what are some of the changes, like the easiest changes that people can make to be more sustainable?
Well, I'm going to give one that's not super popular in Hong Kong, which is cook more at home.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, how you eat is linked to a whole host of sort of chains of what's wrong.
Yeah.
Our food system is broken, and it's not just the quality of the food and what kind of farmers we're supporting and what kind of industrial systems, agricultural systems we're supporting. It's also kind of the whole, you know, food delivery craze, which is, you know, a packaging nightmare. And then just being so dependent on supermarkets and, you know, for convenience, which are just full of plastic packaging, especially here, where even bananas are, you know, individually wrapped.
What is that?
So yeah, it's very difficult to understand. There's an obsession here with kind of hygiene, and I think a misunderstanding of what what hygiene is and how much of an effect you're having on a banana that already has its own skin.
Yeah.
So that's one of my big tips. Another one that I think is super easy to do is to install a water filter, and maybe get a soda stream if you're a soda lover. I love soda water, so I have a soda stream. I never have to buy a bottled drink. You know, I can make my own iced tea. I can make my own sparkling juice. I can, you know, I've got my own water. I put a lot of lemon in my water, which makes it kind of exciting and doesn't make me miss anything that I was drinking before.
Yeah.
I think it's an investment that makes complete sense. Also, you are controlling the quality of your water.
Yeah.
I try and find solutions that are better for the planet, but also better for your health, because I tend to find that if you can kind of talk to people from their personal health point of view, or the health of their children, even more importantly, they are willing to act.
Yeah. Well, earlier this year, you had posted an article about living zero waste in the year of the dog. What, besides the soda stream, what are some of the best products that you're using just this year?
One thing I got really into is things like shampoo bars and soap bars, and just like getting away from having products in the bathroom. I hadn't really thought enough about that, but I think getting into kind of being a minimalist, things like if you're a woman, having a menstrual cup, it's an easy change. You are just saving so much stress from your life, and packaging and toxic shock syndrome and all of that. Things I did not know about until this year were things like being able to get a non-disposable razor. I hadn't thought there was a good solution for that, but there are. And now we have shops here selling them. So you can have these metal razors that, with replaceable metal blades. I mean, that's something that really would bother me a lot, because literally you're shaving your non-reusable shaving utensils and debris is going into the landfill. There's no way to recycle it. There's no way to justify it. And it's a little bit the same with toothbrushes. So obviously everyone knows you can get a bamboo toothbrush. I mean, I don't want to bang on about straws, because I think everyone's made straws their big cause. I think we know we don't need a straw most of the time. We could just have a metal straw. A lot of restaurants here are really taking that on board, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned that you get a lot of samples and stuff like that for your website. So with that packaging, what do you do with it? We're just curious, because we find that sometimes we accumulate plastic, and is it recyclable? Is it not? What's the responsible way? We save what we can, but...
So we started a podcast earlier this year called The Zero Waste Journey, in order to dive deeper into the zero waste lifestyle issues in Hong Kong and globally. And we did a whole episode on recycling. And the sad truth is that right now we do not have a lot of great systems in place for a lot of the packaging. And then the systems that we do have are limited. So obviously you can recycle glass, you can recycle metal. Paper has become more difficult. Plastic is limited to only a couple of 2 out of the 7 different types of plastic. So the sad truth is that you cannot recycle everything. And that's why I'm a big proponent of, the original zero waste philosophy, which is reduce and refuse before recycle. Because really what we need to do is consume less. I'm quite a minimalist, to be honest with you.
So, when we travel, we carry a water bottle, utensils, Tupperware. Sam has his bento box. I prefer the collapsible ones.
Those are great.
Those are great. We carry those pretty much everywhere we go. You being kind of an expert in this, are there any essential pieces that we are missing?
No, I think you've got pretty much your. I like my coffee cup as well.
Yes.
One thing I saw, one of my writers actually, she has a collapsible cup, which I think is great, because then that's really versatile. You can just make your cup get bigger, but it's literally a tiny little flat poster-sized thing. So I think that's pretty great, because for traveling, because sometimes when you're checking in and you go through security, they actually take your water bottle away from you. This has happened to me. Yes.
Oh my gosh, if someone took my water bottle, I would be heartbroken.
Yeah, so some airlines can be really strict about that, even if there's no, if it's a big water bottle. So sometimes I feel a little bit like, what do I do in a situation where I'm going on a long haul flight, and it's happened to me, and my water bottle's gotten taken from me a couple times, and then I just feel totally defeated, and also just I don't understand. But so I think you have to have kind of solutions. Be prepared. I love the idea of having your lunchbox around, because your lunchbox is not only to get food, but also if you're shopping for food, it's great to be able to just not like go to the meat or seafood counter if you eat meat and seafood, or the deli counter if you like dips or whatever, and just fill those up.
Yeah.
That's something that's really easy to do.
Yeah, definitely.
And in Asia, the other thing is I love street food. I love traveling and tasting local food, but a lot of times in Asia it is styrofoam packaging, it is plastic packaging. So definitely having your own lunchbox is
Definitely.
Our niche is we want to make tourism a platform for sustainability. There are millions of people traveling all over, and we just think that that's a powerful form of influence. But that being said, people who go on vacation don't really seem to care about kind of like the footprints that they're leaving. What responsibilities do travelers have to be sustainable? Like, why do you like?
I think incredibly responsible. I think you should be incredibly responsible. And actually, I'm really glad that you guys are focusing on this niche, because obviously in the last 10 years, the global landscape has changed for many big economic reasons. So you've got, the millennials that have come of age that are ready, they want to see the world. In a way, they're much more hungry for travel than their parents. You have, the emergence of huge economies in China and Southeast Asia and India and South America and Eastern Europe, which means that people are traveling more now than ever before. And if you go to any airport, you know that everything's at capacity. So travel has become also a sign of wealth and of sophistication, and people, want to use travel to live a richer life. So on one hand, this is fantastic, right? Because, I would like to pay homage to somebody who departed recently, Anthony Bourdain. He is somebody who really inspired the whole world to travel, and he has to be given credit for at least people traveling for food and discovering really the street culture of countries. So I'm a real big fan of that, of going and discovering, the real city or the real village or the real town, and not just kind of going to resorts and staying there, which is also happening a lot with the emergence of wellness and health and yoga and fitness. You've got a lot more people going to resorts. Right. So, there is an onus on the hospitality industry, and I think a lot of hotels and resorts are taking that on board and going, okay, we need to be better with our environment. We need to be responsible actors.
Yeah.
But that being said, in the last 10 years, if you go back to places that you've been to over the years, there's a huge, we're paying a price. And Bali is a great example of that. I mean, it has just become a plastic pollution pit. A friend of mine was there a couple of weeks ago and said every hotel is giving you, bottled water like crazy. And why are they doing that? Because they think there's a demand. It's not just the hotel's fault. So I do think that as travelers, we have a responsibility to be eco savvy.
Yeah.
I think vote with your dollar, choose resorts and hotel companies and B&Bs that care about the environment, ask the questions when you're making the booking, engage with the locals. I think that's really important. That's part of being a responsible traveler.
Yeah.
I have a friend that they're a family with 2 kids, and every time they go to a new city, they take their kids, 2 days of the holiday has to be giving back, has to be going to work with a charity or volunteer at an orphanage or do something to give back to the community. And I think that's such a great way to raise your children and to travel. So there's the whole social, again, going back to the human side of things, like make sure to engage with the local community and help if you're coming from a country that's very rich and you're going to a country that has huge inequality, which a lot of the most tropical destinations have. Engage with them. Another girl I know, every time she goes to a beach, she does a beach cleanup. Whoever's there, she gets them involved. Why not?
Right.
Be the weirdo on the beach collecting, ocean trash.
Right.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Ask the questions, vote with your dollar, do a beach cleanup, visit local community centers. Take an active role in your position in the global economy.
Definitely. Going back to Hong Kong, what about Hong Kong has kind of made Hong Kong sort of this bed of sustainability?
Well, I think as proud as I am at how far we've come, I don't know if bed of sustainability is how I would personally describe it. I think we have a long way to go in terms of regulation and in terms of really getting big change, in terms of big numbers. But Hong Kong is a great place in that you've got influences from all over the world. You've got the smartest people from everywhere in the world coming to live here, and they're bringing their home country cultures and trends. And so basically they come here and they're like, well, why isn't there a bulk shop? And why is recycling not working? And so they ask these questions, and they force the local community to engage on these questions.
Yeah.
Because if I'm very honest, I don't think the government is very invested in our environmental health. I mean, we've covered this on Green Queen on our podcast. We had someone from the government basically say as much.
Yeah.
There's not much interest, despite how much money we have in the bank. There's not much interest to invest in food waste systems and recycling systems and cleaning the air and lowering vehicle emissions. But there are a lot of activists here with heart, and it's a very easy place to connect with people.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to kind of light a match and start a fire.
Yeah.
And that's what we have that's really special.
Right.
Which I think might be harder to do in certain cities in China or whatever. Because the international community and the local activist community is very kind of connected, you can get things going really fast, and people are very good about sharing their network and their contacts. So you'll meet someone, you'll go, okay, someone will share a journalist contact with you, and someone will say, I know someone in an NGO. Someone will say, well, I know someone in a corporate that we can do something with, and so before you know it, you can launch a movement.
Right. So here in Hong Kong, there are tons of amazing opportunities for people who love waste-free, minimalism, zero waste, vegan, all of these very environmentally friendly, eco-conscious choices and these living styles. But mainland China is very behind on all of this. What can China do? What needs to happen for sustainability to be a thing in China? How do we make that a thing?
I feel, sitting outside of China, that actually mainland China has some really positive trends that I can see happening. I think that the government is much more committed than our local government to actually solving some of these sustainability issues. And I think that a lot of things, what's great about China is that the sheer number that you're dealing with means that you can literally make huge changes. And so we've been covering lately, there's a big rise in vegetarianism and veganism in China, and that's a much bigger deal than it happening in Hong Kong, where we're a population of 7 million. China's a population of 1.5 billion now. So even a 17% of Chinese people who are looking to be vegetarian is literally world changing. No one in the world, no country in the world has those numbers and that power. And I think that all the trends show that millennials in China are actually very, very, very different than their parents. They have not grown up with that insecurity of the Cultural Revolution and the post-Cultural Revolution hangover, and they are committed to choosing brands and companies that have ethical missions behind them, and that they are much more engaged with their health and the environment. So I actually think that and they are going to be the biggest group of millennials in the world.
Yeah.
So I actually think that there is a lot of hope in China. And I think that China is going to end up driving some of the change, just again because of the numbers. So I think what's important in China is awareness building, is using the Weibo channels and the WeChat channels and having more activists join, and if anybody's listening that can invest in people that have a voice, it's just getting more information out there.
Right. It's all about awareness.
I had the pleasure of meeting a wonderful fellow. He's the head of the vegetarian and vegan university associations in all of China. And he was sharing some fascinating numbers with me. We're going to profile him soon. And, based on listening to him, there is a movement growing. and he's traveling the country and raising awareness about these issues. There's a lot of NGOs and animal rights groups that are in China. This is specifically on the vegan front, but just in general, I think we just need more funding and more media awareness building, because at the end of the day, people need to read about this stuff. If they read about it and trends form, more companies will start in this area. But there is no doubt that in China there is a growing movement in all these verticals. One other thing that's very clear is, a lot of soil in China is damaged, so you're going to have a huge movement in vertical farming. That's going to be a way that the Chinese government and Chinese municipalities deal with food security. So, we're probably going to see the greatest amount of innovation in vertical farming from China. So I have a lot of hope for China, and I prefer not to kind of play the sad China story. Yes, from an everyday lifestyle point of view, we're still in a very different place. But I can tell you that the way you're feeling about living in China now, that is how people felt a few years ago about living here in Hong Kong in terms of environmentally conscious living.
Well, that's good. That's very optimistic.
I also think China's fast, so it will take up. Everything will get taken up very fast, and everything will change overnight.
Awesome. Our last question, with the Green Queen being such a huge fixture in Hong Kong, I imagine you do a ton of outreach with local businesses, as you've already said. What is the best way that we can go about informing and educating local businesses about the importance of adopting sustainable practices? If we were to apply a little bit about what you've done here in Hong Kong to mainland China.
I think, again, it's creating some clear talking points around certain issues and then really getting that out there to bigger media channels. Take all the speaking opportunities you can. Take all the interviews you can. Ask anybody that's in the media or in journalism to give you a chance. Really get the message out there. The more writing and content there is around these issues, the more people will make change, and the more we will inspire people to start businesses or to change their daily habits. However you're affecting someone, at the end of the day, without the stories and without the content out there, that's how you inspire people.
Okay, so when we're out traveling, like when we're beyond China, when we're traveling through Southeast Asia, how can we approach local businesses about making sustainable swaps? Like, how do we begin the conversation on the importance of not using plastic straws and replacing that with paper straws, with maybe using biodegradable cups instead of plastic cups? How do we start that conversation with local businesses to try to enact change beyond just what we do individually?
So I think you have to be careful of not being the kind of the foreign tourist that's coming and telling people how to run their businesses. I also think that one of the things that I see happening is not a lack of understanding of the local infrastructure. So you mentioned, for example, compostable cups. Well, in Hong Kong, we've had all these businesses switch to compostable plastics or plant plastics, and it's actually made things worse because we don't have an industrial composter in Hong Kong. So we can't actually compost any of that packaging. So there's a bit of a greenwashing factor there. So I think for me, I would do it in two ways. One, I would, before I go, try and connect with local organizations. So if Zero Waste, for example, has usually like local chapters in every city. And I would try and connect with kind of activists, people who are in the community, who understand from a first-hand point of view what are the issues and what's needed. Because every city and place and town has different requirements. And then two, when you're in an actual restaurant or whatever, maybe show your metal straw, be friendly, just go, oh, I don't need a straw because, have a few zero waste lines in the local language. But I think just having people be exposed to bringing your own straw or bringing your own container will make someone think. But can you literally go in there and say, okay, like it's time to have a chat about your packaging? I mean, when you could be talking to a waitress or who has nothing to do with packaging choices is not maybe the best way to go. So connect with the local community that's already there and, expose through just example.
Cool. Yeah, I think the last thing we want to do is just to show up and
tell
We
people
don't
what
want
to
to
do.
be like a sustainability snob, like, oh,
Yeah,
what you're doing is
or
terrible,
like
you need to do
a
it like
sustainably
this.
colonialist,
Yeah,
where you
exactly.
just come in and you're like, okay, let me tell you how to live your life. No. But usually that's why plugging into the local activist community is the way to go on a lot of these fronts.
Awesome, yeah, that's really good advice. All right, well, thank you so much for taking some time to sit down and answer our questions.
It's been a pleasure. I'm really glad I did.